Well, happy Friday, Tom.
I know. This week kind of flew by. I was away last week traveling with the kids. And, whenever you get back, there's a whole lot of work waiting for you. So, I can't believe it's Friday, but very happy about that.
And likewise, ironically, I was away last weekend too. So you come back and, there's always extra work waiting there for you. But we had a good time away with the kids, and always a pleasure getting away, and always nice coming home too, though.
Absolutely. Where did you go?
So we were in the Bahamas. We went to Atlantis. It was actually Atlantis's 25th anniversary celebration.
Nice.
Little did we know. And I guess there were some celebrities there. One of my friends said Tony Danza was there. I don't know how we missed Tony Danza.
Blast from the past, yeah.
Blast from the past. But unfortunately, there weren't any celebrity sightings, but we did have a good time. Got some snorkeling in, saw a shark, saw some sea turtles. Yeah. And how about yourself? Where were you?
So we took the kids down to Tennessee, around the Smoky Mountain area, rented an Airbnb, which was basically like a cabin in the woods. It was just super peaceful.
Gorgeous.
And we got to explore the Smoky Mountain area, which we had never been to before. And in terms of our wildlife encounter, first night, bear outside the house while we were in the hot tub. You get quickly introduced to wildlife that's in the mountain area down there, but it was all good. The deck was elevated off the ground, so that nice and safe. Yeah,
would certainly keep things exciting.
Absolutely, but it was great to kind of visit a new area that we hadn't been to before, and just beautiful down there in the Smoky Mountain area.
Yeah, neat. Well, hey, we're recording this. It's already November 17th. How did that happen? Right. Yeah, it's wild. Time is flying, not just the week. And I feel like I say this every year too. What happened to the year? But here we are again.
I know. We'll have to make some New Year's resolutions soon, which I never follow through with. But we're happy that we're able to make our first recording here so welcome to Amplified Wealth, According to Plan edition, where we talk about everything related to financial planning. And so, I guess in the spirit of Thanksgiving, which is right around the corner, we wanted to chat, about charitable giving today. We talk to our clients all the time about different ways to give to charity. So we figured that because Thanksgiving is around the corner, and in light of all the good work that our clients do supporting, charities and special organizations, this was like a perfect topic for us to kick off our first episode. So let's jump in.
Thanksgiving's next Thursday, and Tuesday is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. It's actually Giving Tuesday, right? We all are kind of focused on Black Friday, but Giving Tuesday creeps up there too. So I think this is a timely topic for a lot of our listeners and a lot of our clients that maybe are already doing charitable giving, but maybe can do things in a more tax efficient, optimized fashion.
Absolutely. Actually, before we jump in, we should probably just tell some folks a little bit about us. So Kate, do you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Absolutely. That probably makes sense, right? People are asking, who are these people? Sure. So my name's Kate Fishbein. I guess I'll hop in my time machine and kind of start from the beginning. So back to 2000, I was at Connecticut College. I actually had the opportunity to study abroad in New Zealand. After graduating Connecticut College with a degree in economics, I started working at Region Investor Services with a team of portfolio managers. And it was actually there that I met my mentor and now very dear friend, Harold Stein. And we joined the firm in 2003. So I've actually been with the firm already for over, 20 years, which is hard to believe because, I'm only 28, wink, wink.
Of course.
Since joining the firm, I've pursued my MBA. So I received my MBA with a concentration in finance. And also, working with clients over the years, a lot of planning topics were naturally coming up in a lot of our conversations. So I pursued the CFP designation and have found it very helpful because it really allows us to consider our client situations in a much more holistic fashion.
I was going to say the holistic part of it, I think, is, it speaks to how the firm focuses on working with clients, and just I think going back to how you got started, you quickly realize that that part of it is super important, right? When you're understanding what your clients are trying to do, where they are in life. And that plays a big role also in terms of how we're managing assets for clients. So I just think that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yep, absolutely. And I guess, just me personally, I live in northern New Jersey, in beautiful New Jersey, with my husband, my 2 kids. I have a 12-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. And I always kind of joke that she's 10 going on 16, which everyone tells me is normal.
Yep, I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yep. And I have 2 cats, and I enjoy gardening. I play a little tennis. I play a little platform tennis. And that's what I do for fun. And how about you, Tom?
So briefly about my history. So after graduating college back in the late 90s, I got my start in finance in the insurance industry. Quickly realized that at least that part of the financial world wasn't a good fit for me. I really wanted to dive into the details in terms of portfolio management, and learn from people that have been doing it for a while. So quickly found my way into the RIA world, the registered investment advisory world, the fiduciary way of working with clients. And so started as an analyst at a private firm in New Jersey. This is where I live. And as an analyst, really, and did a whole lot of work on portfolio research and construction, trading, and things like that. And then just kind of got thrown into a lot of the planning that the advisors were doing with clients. And that really spurred me to think about taking the CFP, so the Certified Financial Planning designation. So I'm actually coming up my 20th anniversary next year of receiving my CFP. So really proud of that. So I've been with the firm now since I think I go back to 2017. I've been doing wealth management, financial planning, and portfolio management for about 22, 23 years now. So it's been a great ride. And I think, one of the things that really kind of spurred us to start doing this is we work on a daily basis with clients on a whole bunch of different type of planning topics, which are really, really interesting. And we figured, this is another way for people to consume information. There's podcasts everywhere out there. So we wanted to at least figure out a way for us to be able to talk about some of the important things that our clients are doing. And so we figured we'd start with a little bit of charitable planning with Thanksgiving right around the corner.
Tis the season for sure. Yep, absolutely. So it's definitely a timely topic, and I think something that's on everyone's minds, especially because there is this kind of time factor in play too, right? So any charitable gifts that are given, the end of the year is soon to be here for sure. So anything that is going to be done, that time factor is also something to consider in here.
Yeah, good point. I mean, six weeks away is really the time frame that we're talking about here. So obviously, a lot of folks that are thinking about financial plan or charitable giving. One of the things we wanted to make a point of is that the types of things that we're going to talk about today are really suited for folks that have a philanthropic bone in their body, right? This is part of their value system. It's something that they're doing on a regular basis anyway. And so with that being said, we do think that's one of the most important factors here. I mean, from our perspective, there's just lots of different ways to optimize how you're gifting to charity, right? So first and foremost, that charitable part of you, right, should be an important part of what you're doing. And then we could talk a little bit about today about some of the strategies that that clients can take advantage of.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We're not here to tell you just to start giving to charities. We don't want someone making that decision based solely on a tax decision. That should absolutely be part of, who they are, and that aligns with, what their goals are, their philanthropic goals, and also making sure that fits into their overall plan, right? Making sure that gifting level is a comfortable level, because remember, these are irrevocable gifts, right? So once you give the money away, make sure that you don't need it, essentially. Making
Absolutely.
sure that fits into that overall plan picture for sure. So I know, why don't we start with everyone's least favorite topic and maybe discuss taxes, right? And maybe how taxes kind of fit into this, because I think that's a big part of this conversation. Because going back to 2017, when TCJA started, the standard deduction was doubled.
What's TCJA? Just
Tax Cuts Job Act,
That's
right?
right.
Where the standard deduction was doubled. And so what we're seeing lately is that about 90% of folks are actually taking the standard deduction and not itemizing. So Tom, maybe you want to talk to us about, how that tax picture fits in. And I even have a slide because I'm more of a visual person. So I thought maybe it'd be helpful for some of our viewers to kind of see that visual.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Great. So let me share my screen and we'll pull up the tax slide.
All right. So, to your point, obviously taxes, is a benefit of gifting to charity, but everybody's personal circumstances are different, right? Depending on, your level of income and let's say other things that you're potentially allowed to deduct on your tax return. So to your point about the increased standard deduction, right? So that's the table we have on the top of this page. So if you're a single filer in 2023, your standard deduction is almost $14,000. And if you're married filing jointly, your standard deduction is almost $28,000. So essentially, if you're giving to charity and you're looking at other things on your tax return that would reduce your taxable income, things like property taxes, state and local income taxes, mortgage interest, right? Medical expenses. So basically the IRS and through Congress has made it more difficult for folks out there to itemize, because what they've done is they've increased that standard deviation. And if you're going to itemize your deductions, then the amount that are listed on the bottom part of this page is a hurdle, right? You need to be able to exceed, in terms of total deductions, what that standard deduction amount is. So, if we just focus on folks that are married filing jointly, if you add up your property taxes and state and local income taxes, which by the way, we're capped at $10,000 under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, right? So a lot of folks that live in high tax states, you and I are basically reporting live from New Jersey today. New Jersey is obviously a very well-known high tax state. Property taxes are, I believe, the highest in the nation, right? So now you're limited on property taxes and state taxes combined at $10,000. They also limited the mortgage interest. You can only deduct interest on the first $750,000 of loans. And then, one of the other big pieces is, should you be in a circumstance where your medical expenses are on the expensive side, you can deduct those if they exceed 7.5% of your adjusted gross income. And so if you add up those pieces and you're already giving to charity, a lot of times, you may be well under that $28,000 standard deduction, which means you're not actually getting a tax benefit per se from your charitable contribution. So we wanted to point out, what the hurdles look like in terms of the current tax structure, which is on the books until the end of 2025, right? That's when it's going to expire. So if Congress does nothing between now and the end of 2025, then the standard deduction and a whole bunch of other income tax provisions are set to go back to where they were before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was signed into law.
Right. And that's a great point that, the rules right now, these are the rules that we're playing by. But of course, come 2026, the rules could change essentially. And and the current rules it's harder to get to that hurdle where people are itemizing. And even with the charitable contributions, your level of what you can deduct is going to be dependent on the type of property, whether it's, a related use to the charity, whether it's short-term or long-term property, and the type of property that you're giving. So, what you're able to deduct is going to depend on the type of gift a lot of times. And
that's a great point. It actually points to that, that bottom note on the table on this slide, right, where we're talking about a range of what you can deduct based on your adjusted gross income. So you want to just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So for cash gifts, currently you can gift what you gift can be deducted up to 60% of your AGI limit. So, for example, let's say I make $100,000 a year. I give a $50,000 gift to charity because I have that 100,000 AGI. I can deduct that full 50,000 because my cap would be at 60,000 because that would be 60,000 for a cash gift. When we get into appreciated securities and we're talking long-term securities, because oftentimes gifting those long-term securities is going to make better sense than gifting short-term, because short-term securities usually have different rules, which are then dependent on the lesser of the fair market value or the market value of the gift. So a lot of times using that long-term appreciated stock is better than short-term. And for those gifts, it's capped at 30% of AGI. Now, the good news is, let's say I have 100,000 AGI and I gift 40,000 in 1 year of appreciated securities. Well, I'm capped at 30,000. So what happens to that other 10,000? Well, that other 10,000, the good news is it's not gone. You can actually carry it forward over the next 5 years.
Right. It's something where, on a year-to-year basis, right, you may find yourself that you're exceeding that limit. But it allows you to, to your point, carry that forward and then plan for what you're going to do in the following year. And again, back to just this whole concept, through our discussions with clients, each year can be very, very different, right? You could be doing something every single year, or you could be thinking about it more opportunistically, right? We'll talk about some of those strategies while we chat today, but next year could be a very different situation, right? But if you know that you have some carry forward, that'll allow you to make some decisions in terms of how you structure any future, gifts to charity, just depending on what you did this year.
Absolutely. And actually, just yesterday, I was speaking with an accountant and working on a client situation, and I brought up the topic of appreciated securities because I know that this client has been doing some gifting, and I really felt that, hey, she could benefit from appreciated securities. So maybe that's kind of the next focus, maybe the next topic that we go over.
I think so.
I think that's...
Yeah, because, I think when, especially, with the work that we do with our clients, if you think about this in kind of, tiers, right, if you will, obviously the first tier would be, your cash gifts, like you were talking about, right? People writing checks to different organizations that they enjoy supporting. And that's basically gifting 101, right? If we want to get to the next level, taking advantage of the fact that, people have been investing for a long period of time, right? They may own securities in their portfolio that have a very low tax basis, right? And if they're thinking about gifting, this is something that's been just a way to kind of really leverage that. And it's been a nice eye-opening experience for a lot of client conversations.
Absolutely. And really, when, talking about appreciated securities, it really makes sense for someone who's itemizing, right?
Exactly.
In particular. And you kind of get the added tax benefit of being able to, not have to realize that gain and pay tax on that gain.
Right. That's one of the key side benefits here. So let's chat a little bit further about, why it can be, advantageous to use low basis securities to gift to charity.
Absolutely. So, let's just maybe we use a hypothetical client example. Where we say we have client A who's kind of itemizing and they have appreciated Apple stock, and they were lucky enough to buy it at, let's say $10 a share. Well, Apple's around, $190 a share now. So they have a pretty significant gain. So if they were to realize that gain to liquidate funds to give to charity, they would then be looking at, somewhere around a $4,200, capital gain potentially if they're in the higher bracket of, if they're a higher earner where they're getting hit with 20% capital gains tax. And then also that net interest income tax of 3.8%. So it's a 23.8% hit, capital gains hit. And this is just federal
really
tax.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really add up, right? And we're not even getting into New Jersey or any other tax. This is just, the federal tax. So if you were to sell that security to then give the, after-tax proceeds to a charity, you get hit with that tax bill and the charity gets less. So I kind of look at that almost like a lose-lose. And we'd rather consider it almost like flip the situation to be a win-win, where you can give stock, appreciated securities, and many charities are already set up to receive gifts of stock in kind. You can DTC shares directly to charities a lot of times, where you're giving these, low-cost stock gifts. The charity gets the full market value. They don't pay tax. They don't get hit with that capital gains tax, and you get full credit for that gift of stock. So that's what I call the win-win scenario, where you're getting the full credit of the market value for the deduction, the charity's getting the full value of the gift, and that's the win-win we like to see, clients experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it as almost like a fully leveraged gift, right? You get to take advantage of, one, the fact that you've owned something that appreciated in value, which is what we all want, right?
Right.
And then you do avoid that capital gains tax, and the charity receives, to your point, the full market value of that gift. And charities are obviously happy to receive gifts in cash or in kind. In kind just means transferring the shares directly from your account into the charity's account, and then they just typically would sell those and convert them to cash and use the capital for whatever the organization needs it for. So it's a super efficient way to do it. I would say, again, going back to this level of gifting, you can think about doing this, like, so what level of value would make sense, right? Well, I think that, for the most part, when you're thinking about securities that have appreciated, right, you're thinking of gifts that are, at least in the thousands of dollars, right? If you're making an investment and it grows over time, right,
Sure.
That's generally where you're sitting. So cash, I think, would be great if you're, in a lower dollar amount, certainly triple digit, maybe into the 4-digit gift zone, right? But then appreciated securities, that's when you're thinking about making, let's say, some larger value gifts, and using that leverage is to your advantage for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. For the $25, donation here and there, appreciated securities logistically might just be a mess.
Because we get that question from clients a lot. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, when should I think about doing this? And, and it's really, if you start thinking about what level of gift that you are thinking about doing for this particular year, right? And obviously that can change too. And we could talk a little bit about, how you can fit in larger gifts versus smaller gifts, right? And what types of vehicles allow you to take advantage of that kind of concept or so. But I would say that over the years, just working with clients, appreciated securities just work when you're thinking about making a relatively larger gift to charity.
Absolutely. And again, really when you're itemizing. So if you're not itemizing, to your point, what are the other kind of strategies, right, to get you over that hurdle? Because again, that standard deduction hurdle is pretty high. So, I think one technique, right, is kind of maybe grouping some gifts, to your point, where clients are able to bunch multiple years of gifts into one gift. And I think that kind of like this bunching, example, right, where maybe a client particularly has a very high income year.
Right. Not unusual, right?
Yeah. And they've kind of been floating under, they've been taking the standard deduction, maybe doing 5,000 of gifting a year. And, we kind of put our thinking caps on and say, okay, well, how do we get us over that standard deduction so we're able to itemize for that charitable deduction and help to reduce maybe some of those, that high income year, reduce some of that taxable income. And that's where this bunching strategy, I think, really gets exciting.
I agree. I think we have a slide on that, right?
We do. Yeah, let me pull that up. So this is just a hypothetical client/individual, right? We'll call them 65-year-old married couple, income of $130,700. That number is not pulled out of thin air. That's really just to make the math easy, because we know that the standard deduction for a 65-year-old married couple filing jointly is $30,700. So this is just to make the math a little easier.
I like what you did there.
So let's say they give, they're flying under the radar of that standard deduction each year. They're giving $5,000 each year to charities. Let's say they don't have a mortgage, so they don't have any mortgage interest to deduct, and that their combined state and local tax is around $25,000. They must live in New Jersey. So we know that SALT is capped at 10,000. And if they're giving 5,000, well, their deductions would only be 17,000. Actually, excuse me, 15,000. So they're just under that 30,000. Well, they're not just under, they're significantly under that 30,700 standard deduction. So they're going to take the standard deduction. It's bigger. It's going to help them to reduce their taxable income. And that's kind of like their given scenario each year. Well, let's say, and this isn't even something, we could even blow up the numbers and say, okay, well, what if they have an even higher earning income year? But let's just assume they're still earning 130,000, $700. What can we do better? We know that they're giving that 5,000 to charity already. This is already a charitably inclined person. We're assuming that it fits into their plan. What can we do to kind of strategically maybe help to reduce their taxable income in a year? Well, they could bunch gifts. So meaning instead of giving $5,000 each year for let's say 5 years, they take, 25,000 and have that represent 5 years of giving and give it to the charity in that one particular year. They're now at 35,000 in itemized deductions. So higher than that level. So that's going to then help to reduce their taxable income, which is kind of this little bunching strategy example here for our viewers on the right-hand side, where they're then able to, by bunching, help to get a little extra, boost and benefit in that particular year.
Absolutely. And, and folks can take, you can take a break after that, right? So this is an example of saying you're already doing the 5,000, right? You just accelerate that and you do 5 years worth right now. And then next year you can say, I'm going to take a break because I just accelerated what I normally do. And, sometimes you hear from the organization that you're supporting, right? That, they have a project that they're working on. They're trying to raise some much needed capital, right? And, this could be a great opportunity for you to help the organization that is telling its supporters that it'd be great to be able to, to fund that in the near term versus waiting over a number of period of years. And two, to your point, here they get to, from a tax standpoint, really reduce more of their taxable income because they decided to accelerate that. So again, it's just a nice way to kind of think about it opportunistically, right? And to pay attention to basically what Congress is telling us in terms of what that hurdle rate is to be able to deduct charitable contributions on your tax return.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. Working with the charity, if they do have some kind of, extra needs in a given year, it's a great point. But I guess, it's not like a one size fits all. Maybe folks don't want to give all that money to a charity in one given year. Mm-hmm. And I think, maybe that's a good segue kind of for donor advised funds. Let's chat a little bit more about donor advised funds. It's been a topic that, I think has really maybe not exploded is the right term, but just become much more popular over the last several years, right? It's basically a way for clients and families to kind of be more in control of the overall giving, the strategy, creating a legacy, right, for their family. And again, we started at the top of our talk here, just talking about, clients who, giving to charity is part of their value system, right? And, and I'm sure you would agree, when you talk to clients, the feedback that you get is this is something they learned, let's say from the previous generation, right? And they want to be able to give back, and they're trying to teach the next generation, right, that this is something that's important. And so donor advised funds can be a great way for families to kind of feed that legacy, right? And reinforce those values. And there's just I think just a very flexible way for families to kind of build out that charitable legacy planning. Certainly, in years past, it used to be, you had to create a foundation, right? Yeah. A charitable foundation, which was super expensive, right? Whole lot of tax reporting that went along with that. And that was really kind of reserved for folks that had, a whole lot of wealth. And for other families that, have some wealth and want to be able to support charities, donor advised funds have really kind of shifted the paradigm there a little bit and made it much more accessible to a whole lot more families. I agree. And I was going to raise that point as well. The donor advised fund, there are fees because, it's a sponsored account, and there are, tax forms that a lot of these accounts will supply for you, which is great. It takes some of your, I guess it eases kind of some of what you need to do. But yeah, the foundations of days of old. So this has opened up this is a whole new tool for folks. And I think it really also pairs very well with kind of that bunching strategy, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Totally agree with that.
Yep. Because so what happens, and I'll share this slide as well, just for a visual. So, donor advised funds, you get a tax deduction in the year that you give the funds to the donor advised fund. So it's that immediate tax deduction. So again, really pairs super nicely kind of with that bunching strategy. If you have a high income year and you're looking for ways to kind of make that, one larger gift as opposed to many smaller gifts, helps to reduce the taxable income. But the beauty with the donor advised fund is that you don't have to give the charity all the funds in year one. You actually are able to make those elections at your leisure. And the funds grow, if you are investing within the donor advised fund, grow tax deferred. So to your point, Tom, absolutely. It's a great legacy tool for getting family involved and creating this vehicle for the family and to help charities.
I totally agree. I think the way that I like to describe these with clients is, it's basically creating a charitable investment account, right? So when families think about, the resources they built up, right, over the course of their lives, and, if we just think about the portfolios that we manage for clients, right, typically a portfolio would include several different accounts, right? You might have a joint account, an IRA, maybe there's a trust portfolio, things like that. If you create a donor advised fund, to your point, right, you're essentially moving capital from your own personal account to a donor advised fund, which becomes a charitable investment account, another bucket, if you will, right? Because you don't have to send out 100% of the contribution to charities immediately. You make the contribution, you get the tax deduction in the year in which you do the contribution, right? And then there's capital in an account for you to invest and for you to advise, which charity should benefit for whatever dollar amounts, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that part, the concept of a donor advised fund, clients really kind of wrap their heads around the fact that, okay, this is another bucket that I get to influence, right, over time. And yes, the client can't enjoy the capital for myself anymore. But what I'm doing here is I'm creating an opportunity to grow assets for, different charitable organizations over time, so that I can start to, figure out how much I want to benefit in a given year, which particular organizations are important to me, right? And obviously that'll change depending on what's happening, in our clients' lives. But the ability to create one of these is really convenient. There's a lot of large, well-known institutions that offer donor advised funds. And they make it pretty user-friendly from our experience, right? In terms of, access and reporting and being able to log in and things like that.
Making those grant recommendations, all that. And one thing I want to highlight too, Tom, because you made a great point, which is, the assets, it's an irrevocable gift, when you're contributing to a donor advised fund. So again, making sure that gift fits into your overall financial picture, I think is paramount, right? Because yes, you are able to make recommendations for grants. You're able to make recommendations for the investment positioning, but essentially these aren't funds that you can say, oh, hey, I need those back. Sorry.
Exactly, right.
Once they're in that account, it's done. It's a done deal. It's a irrevocable gift. So that's just something, make sure you consider your whole picture before, gifting to a donor advised fund for sure. And yeah. And the other thing too is, the administration side is so much easier. I had a client that we would, gift appreciated securities each year to various charities, and it really got laborious. And not just for me, I didn't mind doing it. I was happy to help, but really for her, in terms of receiving those acknowledgement letters and all of that from the various organizations was really painstaking, come tax time. So the donor advised fund has made it much easier. You get the tax forms. And of course, with that convenience, hey, you're going to, there's a fee for sure. And, of course, always shop around and as you had mentioned, a lot of different institutions have different products and different offerings. So, but always just something to keep in mind there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess we haven't chatted much about the reporting part of all this for tax purposes, right?
Sure.
So, to your point, the donor advised fund concept and structure, they provide all that necessary tax reporting information, which is obviously really, really important. If you're writing checks to charity, right? If you're doing that via credit card and whatnot, obviously it's on you to kind of keep track of those receipts, canceled checks, so that when it comes time to do your taxes, you have all the necessary documentation. Certainly, if you're going to be in the in the bucket of being able to itemize your deductions. So from a reporting standpoint, keeping track of all that stuff is really important. We can certainly help when it comes to gifting securities, right? Because we have all that reporting at our fingertips, and that makes it pretty easy. But yeah, when clients think about this type of thing, obviously everything we want to do we should be getting more convenient, right? Easier to do, more user friendly, right? And I think donor advised funds is certainly a part of that solution.
I think it's a great tool. Yep, for the appropriate person, for sure.
How about we talk about maybe one last topic, right? Where
sure.
it involves a little bit of, retirement planning / distributions, right? And a relatively new opportunity for folks that are charitably inclined. And that has to do with people that own IRA assets and are subject to required minimum distributions. It's
a great idea because really we've been talking about, mostly after tax money, right? But what if most of your money is held up in an IRA? How are there any benefits? What can we do there for a client that has significant IRA assets, maybe is subject to that, required minimum distribution? What's the best way to handle that? And I think what's interesting too is, right, the new Secure Act 2.0 increased the required minimum distribution to 73, but the QCD, which is what we're going to talk about, that qualified charitable distribution, actually, the age requirement's only 70 and a half. So technically you're able to do this qualified charitable distribution at 70 and a half, but it really might make best sense for someone who's already taking required minimum distributions. And now that age is 73.
Right, because that's the piece that spurs the income component, right?
Exactly.
It's when the government says you have to start, distributing some assets and therefore, Congress or IRS starts to get their tax revenue, right? There's been this agreement for folks that own IRAs and 401ks. So as long as you put money in those plans, we won't tax what you put in and what happens inside. But at some point, the government is going to need their revenue, right? So the distribution is really, the key here. And the 70 and a half, I think that, that just kind of speaks to how Congress is famous for complicating things, right?
Yeah.
That used to be the old required minimum distribution age before the Secure Act changed all that. And for whatever reason, Congress decided to keep that as at least the minimum age in terms of making a qualified charitable distribution from your IRA.
Yeah.
But I think from a strategy standpoint, what you said kind of nailed it. It really makes the most sense, and it only reduces your taxable income once you are of minimum required distribution age, which is now 73.
Yeah, and it was interesting too because I think that that last Secure Act update happened. I think it was like Christmas Eve or something right before year end.
Tons of time
to adjust. Exactly. Tons of time for everybody to get used to that. Well, yeah. So let's talk about qualified charitable, distributions. So yeah, absolutely. This would be someone with, IRA funds. You can do up to $100,000 per person per year. Again, you have to be over 70 and a half, but it really only makes sense if you're taking that required minimum distribution. And it's a tool where you have to send the funds directly to a charity where the funds aren't coming to you. You can't take receipt of the funds and then say, oh, but I ultimately gave it to so-and-so. Nope, it's got to go directly to the charity. And also something just to keep in mind too, make sure you're not getting something in return. You're not getting goods or services in return for that charitable distribution because that could actually nullify any tax benefit that you get. So,
great point, right?
So of this 100,000, let's say you were to give that full 100,000, you're going to get that tax deduction. You're not going to have to pay that. Well, I should say that taxable income is now reduced by that 100,000. So even though you took that 100,000 from the IRA, it's not going to be, you're not going to have to pay tax on it. There is still going to be a 1099, kind of just speaking those tax requirements. So you definitely still have to keep track of the distribution as well as any of the, that receipt that you get. I think it's called the CWA, right? That written acknowledgement from the charitable organization, and make sure you're looping in your accountant so they know what's going on too.
Right. I think that's a really good point you just made is, a lot of the stuff we're talking about today really does involve a team of advisors for our clients, right? So from our perspective as financial planners, we're not tax professionals, we're not CPAs. So, we do want to be working with our clients' accountants so that, the strategy can be basically agreed upon by all parties, and that everybody's in the know, right? You don't want any surprises at the end of the year, certainly when it comes to tax reporting and
tax surprises are always the least favorite surprises. I think
that's one of the things that we all learned early on in our careers is manage expectations and limit those surprises. But this is a really neat feature for folks that, and again, it's for folks that obviously don't need all of that distribution that has to come out of the IRA, right? Certainly a lot of folks, they need that distribution to fund their lifestyle, but to the extent that you don't need that capital, because again, this is a rule, right? Congress says you have to start distributing at least a minimum out of your retirement accounts, right? Because they want that tax revenue. And then it's up to our clients to figure out what they're going to do with that capital, right? It's either you move it into the bank account and you spend it on XYZ, or you move it into your non-retirement account and you invest it, right, for future use. Or now, you can support a charity, and that helps satisfy that RMD, right? And it also helps reduce the income that you report on your tax return that year. So I think it's a really neat opportunity for clients that are in that required minimum distribution, bucket, if you will, as an option.
Absolutely. And let's say, hypothetically, we have a client that has, they're taking required minimum distributions, but let's say they also have, a significant position in Apple stock with, appreciated securities. What would you advise typically, with a client in that situation? Should they do a QCD or should they do appreciated securities? We're going to get the most bang for your buck.
Yeah.
In terms of a tax perspective.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that points back to, some of the details that apply here, right? So, what we love about the gifting appreciated securities is avoiding that capital gains tax, right? And, that capital gains rate is different than ordinary income, right? So required minimum distributions that come out of your retirement accounts, it counts as ordinary income, right? It's just like getting a paycheck from your employer, right? And typically those tax brackets for ordinary income are higher than where the capital gains rates are. And right now, capital gains rates are not, relatively speaking, they're not, super expensive, right? There's a couple different tiers, 0 to, and then 15, and then 20. And then they added on, some of the surtaxes through the Secure Act that can make it as high as close to 24%. But for the most part, I think, a lot of the situations that we're seeing is, our clients are in ordinary brackets that are higher than that. And so, a QCD would give you more bang for your buck because now you're eliminating income at those higher ordinary income tax brackets.
Right. Sure. Right. Yeah. No, that's a great point. So, that QCD can definitely, give you a little bit more in terms of, your tax punch. So that's a good thing. So yeah, it's great.
And it highlights just every client's personal situation, right? And, these kind of conversations and opportunities are, clients are going to behave differently just depending on, what's important to them. But I think at least educating folks about, what those opportunities look like, puts them in a position where they can make a decision that really can kind of optimize their giving strategies.
Yeah, that's great. Well, neat. So, and so Thanksgiving's already next Thursday. I'm scrambling here, Tom.
Yeah, well, I mean, so
scrambling.
next week is going to be, typically folks are either traveling to where they need to be, right?
Yeah.
So from a work perspective, gets a little tight, with people kind of either traveling or they're, let's be honest, some people, start to mentally check out a little bit, right? They want to kind of jump into the holiday spirit a little bit, and I get it. So that means that, if you're thinking about doing stuff like this, now you're looking at the final week of November through December. Which is not a whole lot of time, but you could certainly make a contribution that'll count for 2023 if you get your act together for sure. One of the things you were talking about the other day was the donor advised fund piece of it, right? Because that's not the simplest thing to set up.
No,
I mean, it's not that complex, but it takes some time.
Yeah, absolutely. And depending on, where you're opening your donor advised fund, different institutions have different lead times. So it could be anywhere from 2 weeks to, 3 weeks to open the account. And I know, some of the institutions do require, certainly, when you're recommending those grants to different charities, that those recommendations be in sometimes before the end of November. So absolutely, this is, a timely discussion. And if you are, considering any of these strategies, as we mentioned, worked with your outside advisors, and also, it's time to get going.
Yeah. It's, and you can think about, what 2023 looks like from a tax standpoint. And then obviously 2024 is a fresh start. So depending on what's on your plate for next year, right? Taking advantage of some of these strategies is certainly an annual exercise.
And that's a great point too. And maybe just even looking at various income projections for this year or next year, because even if you're gifting, if you're itemizing, when am I going to be in a higher tax bracket? Is my income going to be higher next year? Maybe it makes sense to wait to implement some of these strategies, or, those things as well, making sure you're kind of being considerate of the tax bracket and income projections.
Yeah. So maybe when we're sitting down and enjoying some turkey next Thursday, people can think about, what the best course of action might look like. Where are you going to be for Thanksgiving?
So we're just hosting a small group. I think I'm going to outsource a lot of the sides, either have people bring and, make a few things myself.
It's a team effort. Yep.
Team effort. My husband is doing the turkey. He's in charge. And he spatchcocked the turkey last year. And
that is something that I just learned about. I'll be honest, yesterday. I haven't heard of that concept before, and I guess I'm outing myself as I'm not a big, I'm not a good cook, and I'm not a big barbecue guy. I like to eat it, but I don't know how to prepare it. But I just watched a short video on spatchcocking a turkey. What is that all about? Oh,
well, first it gets a little messy because you have to kind of deconstruct the turkey. You're essentially getting this large bird to lay flat. Okay. So we did it on a sheet pan last year, and I will tell you, if we are striving for efficiency as part of our goal here on this podcast, cooking spatchcock turkey is an efficient way of doing it. I think we cooked a whole bird in 2 hours. So It freed up the oven for some of the sides that, I was making.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that was good. And yeah, funny story last year, I tried that sweet potato pie with the marshmallows on top for the first time. Mm-hmm. If you do that, just be careful. You have to make sure if you put it in the broiler, don't close that oven door. Just keep an eye on it. We had roasted marshmallows. Yes.
Multitasking on Thanksgiving, it might be one of the most difficult things to handle. I speak from the position of I don't host Thanksgiving, right? I always go. We take turns, whether it's my side of the family or my wife's side of the family, right? We show up. We typically bring, like a dessert or maybe a small side, nothing too complicated. But we're not the ones that are actually doing the heavy lifting, right? And and that's a good thing because I'm not a great cook, like I was saying. But this year I'm going to be at my sister's, right? She hosts. She lives in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, so we'll be
all right. A bit of a drive.
They do, yeah, it's a little over an hour, so not too bad. So I'll get to see. I think all my sisters are going to be there. I actually have 4 sisters.
Oh, wow.
And I think this is an on year for everybody. Everybody else has their in-laws that they kind of do things with too. But I think I'll be able to see everybody, plus my folks will be there. We don't do the spatchcock. It's a traditional oven-baked turkey, right?
Well, that's classic.
So that's it's certainly a staple. I will miss my my mother-in-law's turkey. What she does is she wraps it in bacon.
Ooh, yes, my brother has done that. That's delicious.
And it adds to that flavor, which is fantastic. But one of the things that I won't be having this year, and that's because a lot of folks in my family have a nut allergy. I don't, but one of the things I got introduced to late in life was a pecan pie.
Oh, delicious.
So yeah.
I'm sorry it was late in life, a late in life introduction for you.
I know.
You're missing out on all those years.
That's the thing. We're a traditional like apple pie, pumpkin pie. There might be a couple other desserts here and there, which are obviously classics, right? They're fantastic. I love it.
And delicious.
Put a little vanilla ice cream on an apple pie, right? That's fantastic. But we never had that pecan pie, and I got to try it we had a bake off years ago at a prior firm. So I got to try a whole bunch of different types of pecan pie. But now, even my son has nut allergies, and my wife too. So if I have pecan pie, it's me by myself, like maybe at a restaurant, just eating off to the side. So I won't have that at Thanksgiving this year, but it'll be. I'm looking forward to all the different sides.
Okay. Well, can you buy one for yourself, and keep it at the house? Do you have any nut allergies at the house, or?
Well, yeah. Well, my son and my wife, but
okay.
But we do have peanut butter because my daughter and I, we're nut enthusiasts, if you will, and their allergies are, it's been manageable, which has been good. So, but otherwise, yeah, it's usually at a restaurant. I'll go have it, and
it's probably safer that way for everybody.
Yeah,
you don't want to eat the
absolutely.
whole pie anyway.
Yeah.
Well, neat. Well, that sounds like fun. And this has been great. I think, for all of our listeners and viewers out there, we hope you like our content and like us, subscribe. And we're hoping to not only bring in some additional guests from inside the firm and our planning committee, but I think maybe at some point, Tom, too, maybe some outside guests.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, this is our first episode. We wanted to, chat about something that was timely, just in the spirit of Thanksgiving. So we do appreciate you spending some time, and we are available on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. So if you, wherever you're looking for your podcast, just pull up Amplified Wealth, and we'll be talking about all things financial planning on According to Plan. So, Kate, have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You as well, Tom.
I will see you after the holiday.
All right, great. Look forward to
wish
that.
Everybody else a happy Thanksgiving too.
Take care.